Yeah. Should be able to make some good decisions anyway. We've got the right people here.
Okay, so welcome everyone to this workshop. We have a number of people actually in the chamber today, budding councillors and members of Parliament from Fernworth Primary School, who are very welcome here. We also have a live stream, so for those of you joining us on live stream, good afternoon and welcome. I'm chairing this meeting today because the Mayor is at a funeral. That's Rick Morell's funeral, and I believe that there are a number of other councillors there too, so we are fairly slim in the ground in terms of numbers, but we certainly have enough to carry out this meeting. So we offer our condolences, of course, to the Morell family. So we'll make a start. Is there any comments from staff first, or will we go straight into this? No. Okay. So this is the first of a series of meetings which will eventually lead to an agreed statement of intent between Great South and Council. That always starts with a workshop where we can discuss freely and without the normal constraints of a council meeting where we see Great South, or what we see Great South doing on behalf of Council next year. That will lead to a letter of expectation which we are expecting to be able to write before the close of this term. So before October, a letter of expectation will be sent to Great South, which guides them in their preparation for a proposed statement of intent. That then comes back to Council and is negotiated between Council and Great South, and eventually it leads to what is in effect the marching orders for Great South for the next financial year. So we are starting a little bit earlier this year, but as it's an election year, that's appropriate because obviously the existing councillors have a hopefully very close understanding of what Great South are doing on behalf of Council at the moment. So we've kicked the process off. We will have a letter of expectation to Great South before the election, but the statement of intent will actually be approved by the next Council, probably fairly early in the new year. So that's the process. This is a workshop, so there are no decisions taken here. It's an opportunity to have a free discussion amongst ourselves about the work that we think Great South could be doing on our behalf next year, and the opportunity for Great South to say, well, you know, if we're going to do that, that's great, but realise, you know, that might require more resources or whatever. So that's the purpose of a resource, of a workshop. It's a freer discussion than you might have normally in a council meeting. So with that, Chami, I'm going to hand over to you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon, councillors. As always, it's an honour and privilege to be here, and we would like to use this time today just to go through what we have done for the last year. Considering the next financial year will be the last within the current LTP cycle, our thought process is that we continue to do what we've been doing and see some more of those projects come to fruition. And then when we have the new triennium start, we would like to look at what new deliverables, if new priority areas are to be focused on, and also what kind of measurements you want to see, as opposed to how we've been doing it this year. So for me, I think we just really want to quickly go through the point that our vision continues to be the same. We want to support even better lives through sustainable regional development. And
Chami, could I just suggest that we might actually take questions as we go?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if any councillor has a question, just put your hand up and we'll take them as we go.
Absolutely,
Thanks.
Chair, thank you. this vision we put up for every presentation that we do make to the public, to the councillors, to our shareholders and stakeholders, to ensure that everybody has a clear understanding of this. And I think maybe when we do the next triennium, we might want to look at the vision if that's what our shareholders deem fit to do. This year, as last year, and hopefully for the next year, we want to continue with the 4 priorities that we work under. The regional development leadership, and that's predominantly the projects that we progress through Beyond 25. Regional promotion, business support and diversification, again, including the RBP, Mayor's Task Force for Jobs and Southland Youth Futures, and Net Zero Southland and the decarbonisation work that we do predominantly with our businesses, and some of those reporting our regional emissions report and a review of our energy strategy and so on and so forth. So these are the 4 priorities we've worked against last financial year, which we've just ended on the 30th of June. And so to set the context for next year, we just quickly want to touch on some of those really key areas. Yeah.
Question, Tom?
Yes.
So, Shami, with each of those areas, within those areas, what external funding has come in or is available? So what I'm trying to understand is what does ratepayer funding fund of that piece, or what of those priorities is able to attract central government cash or some of those sorts of things? So
certainly. So business support and diversification, under that we have a contract with central government through MB for the Regional Business Partner Program, and that is valid for another 2 years grant. That's about, Suzanne, you'll probably be able to tell me, about $175,000 a year? It's about $175,000 a year, so we've got that confirmed for the next 2 years. We've also got the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, but that is a Southland District-specific contract that we hold with SDC. But it does contribute and support some of the work we do against the Southland Youth Futures Program, which is Careers Fest, for example. That's our biggest sort of event now that we manage. But in addition to that, everything else is pretty much what we do.
Funded.
Ratepayer funded. Looking at, and that's another area that we will be looking at, possibly the decarbonisation programs, whether there's a co-funding mechanism, where the businesses actually support us with that. RBP pays for some of those programs as well, because there's funding from RBP in addition to what they pay us, but there's funding available to businesses, and they can access that funding to support the decarbonisation programs.
Who's
as
RBP?
well. Regional Business Partners.
Oh, yeah. And then so does, for example, regional promotion, like, do you attract additional money to that from businesses? So the regional promotion that Great South does, is that wholly funded by ratepayer funds, or is that, subsidised by ratepayers, and then there's money attracted to that from businesses or other areas?
Yeah, Mark will speak further to that. We'll talk about the estimated advertising value that we leverage from the money that the ratepayers pay towards regional promotions, and the wide exposure that we get by partnering with industry partners. So there's an element, they don't give us money physically, but there's opportunities to expand our reach through those partnerships.
Shami, on the same subject, I think it came under business support. Youth Futures, is that still live, or it is still live?
It is still live.
So how is that funded?
That is partly funded. So this year we had applied to ILT, Community Trust, and to the Tyndall Foundation. We have got support from the Tyndall Foundation, and Community Trust have suggested that they give us a bit of money for impetus and investigation. If we want to repurpose that to support Southland Youth Futures, then they have given us the authority to do so.
And some Invercargill City money goes into that too? A question.
City money does not go into the Southland Youth Futures, does it? No, it does not. So it is externally funded.
Okay, thank you.
So in terms of those, sorry Tom, but in terms of those priorities that we're deciding, if we're here, you could decide to invest in youth futures as part of our contribution. We could make that a priority.
You could, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
I think it'd be helpful, actually, Chami. I mean, not today, although you could speak a little bit today if you want about it. But I don't think in the last 3 years I remember Council hearing very much about the Youth Futures programme, which I think is extremely important, actually. I kind of knew it was going on in the background, and I remember, certainly from my time at Venture, you know, it was we talked about it frequently. But either today or maybe in a future presentation, you could actually come and talk a little bit more about it to Council.
Absolutely. We're more than happy to do that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, so I'm going to now pass on to Bobby that leads the projects under Beyond 25. And then it'll we'll hand over to Mark. My apologies first, prior to me starting the presentation, I was to give an apology from Steve Canny. He's really sick. And the office seems to have this awful flu and a cold and cough. So my apologies for that. There are 2 slides of Steve's, which I will speak to roughly, but any questions on that I'm going to have to take back to him because I don't have that very on me today.
Oh, well, so Steve will be watching this, so get well soon, Steve.
Let's hope he is.
Awesome. Okay, good morning and nice to see everybody. Look, I'm going to cover 3 things today, housing, aquaculture and DISH, the data hub. I think I'll touch on some key things with the aquaculture strategy, which is just in its, let's say, step 99 of 100 in terms of being completed. And I'm going to suggest we have some chats to your staff about coming back and actually going into it a bit more detail, because there's quite a bit in there. But we do have enough today to be able to share some of the high-level findings from that piece of work. Okay, so in terms of the aquaculture plan, we started it in January. As I said, it's almost complete. It was as a response of a lot of things, from the government reviewing the national targets in terms of getting $3 billion of revenue from aquaculture and identifying that Southland could be possibly up for about $1 billion of that. So we said, look, we'd like to understand a little bit more about how that would work, what projects would need to happen, and then what the enablers would be for those projects to actually occur. So the plan does that. It works with 10 aquaculture projects, but when you see it, it also talks a lot about the enablers, because it's not a strategy, it's a pathway, because the aquaculture goals will only be achieved by those businesses achieving their own goals in terms of salmon production, etc. So this is actually about the other parts of the plan, you know, of how we welcome them, or just what the licence to operate looks like in terms of local people being employed, how it connects to our planning within councils, thinking of the RM reform, and it goes into a lot more detail about that. On this slide, this is still a draft. There's one to go in there. They keep popping up, which is great. But this just outlines the 10 projects that are either currently happening or will happen, and it just talks about the potential value at full scale, as well as potential FTEs and also their current situation. So what this does, it just gives you a collective view of a lot of things that we might not have been looking at collectively up till now. This page basically summarises the plan. So while it's not a strategy, it still has some goals linked to those revenue projections of the 10 projects. So at the moment, aquaculture it can be accountable for 185 direct jobs, which is about $122 million in revenue. Just a little bit of a word here that the data is very tricky, so you can't separate export from domestic data, and you can't bring it down to a regional level. So we work with Seafood New Zealand and Aquaculture New Zealand to try to get these figures as close as we can. But you'll see there's 5 goals, which start with growing the value of existing activity, both on land and in the water, which is Big Glory Bay predominantly. We also talk about extending into the open ocean, which aligns with the National Aquaculture Plan. It's not just about the big dollars and the big projects. There's also a need to have diversity in the aquaculture offering. Really important, because as you want to attract workforce, you need to develop research, because it's going to be really important. You need to make sure we have a wide base and the sector is diverse. The final 2 points talk about the principles of sustainability underpinning growth, alongside the need that we all know about is to develop infrastructure and services which are fit for purpose not only for aquaculture, but also for other industries and existing economic growth. So there's quite a bit in there, but again, we'll be able to send the plan in about a week.
I think, Bobby, a comment on that. If you look at the right-hand side of the previous slide, the future state, that is almost exactly the same size as TY. So we're talking about aquaculture growing to a point where it would make at least a contribution to Southland that TY does now. So it's a major contribution, isn't it? Just one other thing. I wonder where are these slides going to be available? Because I'm just conscious that, you know, the school group at the back might well like to have these as a resource for project resource or something.
It's with the council already, staff. So happy for it to be distributed.
Okay. So, Bobby, before you might just actually check with the school how they can actually access them, because I can imagine there'll be a few projects will flow out of this day's work. Yeah.
That's a great idea, Chair. Yeah, well, definitely. Brilliant. Okay, so look, I've just got a couple more slides that just summarise some of the revenue opportunities. So this one just talks about individual projects and their individual revenue aspirations. So you've got towards the right of the bar chart your open ocean salmon farms, which obviously have quite large figures. It's interesting to note that even with existing mussels and salmon, there's projected to be about a 36% increase in the value of seafood. So you don't have to get more activity to actually see growth in revenue. So we've calculated that because we got Infometrics to do all the economic analysis for us. Okay, this slide talks about, which the Chair will be familiar with, those billion-dollar targets, which he's correct, were there back in Swords. And now what we can see with the other projects is that it's actually well over $3 billion. Look, there's a whole lot to go with that, as you can imagine, and so that's why we counter this by saying it's definitely a big diversification opportunity, but there's a lot more to it. So, for example, the workforce has to be taken in context because there'll be a lot of automation and mechanisation of the industry as the tech evolves. So, they need that to be efficient. So we shouldn't have large workforce goals. Of course, there'll be more workers. We need to make sure we train the workforce to be able to operate the tech, if you get my drift.
So will you work with, sit with that?
Yes. Yes.
To make sure that they're training fit for purpose.
Yeah, exactly right. So we've developed a workforce plan. So we took the previous one from Just Transitions, and with Southern Institute of Technology, Aquaculture New Zealand and Ministry of Social Development, we've updated it. So we've got a 3-year target, which just talks about creating awareness with children on the opportunities of aquaculture, because it's not a known career opportunity, and exactly as you say, trying to get the training courses and qualifications to line up with what the industry need. Cool, sorry.
Have you done any modelling around the ongoing revenue that stays in the region? So what I mean by that, there'll be a capital program which local people employed to stand up these projects, but then there'll be operational cost to service, which you would think would be done locally, and there'll be other expenditure which will be captured locally. It'd be interesting to see that relative to the gross revenue, to see how much we're actually retaining. Is it 10%, is it 15%, is it 20%? And to use TY, you may know, Tom, you think about the labour force and all the R&M that's done locally of their export dollars, quite a bit of it the city benefits from. And I think that's what we need to understand around these sorts of things, just to be reassured that these sorts of ventures do have benefit to our community and to our people.
I think there's, what you're really saying is what contribution to GDP would this make, as opposed to what the revenue would be. And that sort of work, if you put it in the hands of consultants, is extremely expensive. And I think you'd get to a point where you'd want to actually have a really good number. But I think the question you're asking is, look, could we have at least a first cut idea of what that contribution would be, rather than, funding consultants to do the work, because it's been done, I think for TY it's been done maybe 3 times in the last 50 years. It's very expensive to do it.
But equally, like Sanford's, and I'm not sure, Ngāi Tahu, Pani, you may know, but certainly Sanford's have other operations, say, for in the Sounds, so they will have some idea about what's a local spend versus what's not. And so just a guide, I don't think, to your point, Chair, that it has to be sort of detailed consultancy type stuff, but we need some sort of feel for it to just reassure, that the opportunity is actually there for our people. So.
Yes, I can give you an answer in 2 parts to that. It's a really good question. So Infometrics have done the initial GDP forward calculations. So that's step 1. That is just a baseline from which we can go forward. So we've just got a peg in the sand. The reason why it's not definitive is because a lot of these projects are at early stages of planning. So until they get granted consent, they haven't done their full business case. They don't know what conditions they can operate with. So it's really hard to calculate then, how many tonnes of salmon, what workforce and what then supply chain, requirements they have. So the key is that they've contributed to this work, which we're very appreciative of. We're now working very closely with all 10, which is actually quite a big undertaking. And it's actually, this process has made them reevaluate their own business, where they're at as well.
Bobby, just on that previous slide again, one of the things that's very noticeable in that is that all of those projects are either centred on Bluff or they are going to be serviced out of Bluff. Even if they're Stewart Island, they're likely to be serviced out of Bluff. Are you also at the same time looking at the infrastructure requirement that flows from that?
Yes. Oh, you're going to love the plan, Mr. Chairman. So there's 9 focus areas, and of those 9, there's one that talks specifically about developing a marine hub, and the infrastructure. So that's in partnership with Calder Stewart, Southport, the airport. So it talks about how you get things out to market. So we've kind of linked up the industry who've told us how much they're going to put through, if it's fresh fish, if it needs to get to certain markets at certain times, and we've started the connection process with the people or the networks that will help them do that. So yes, I feel like it's very thorough, and I've definitely built on a lot of work that has been done from the Just Transitions, the Mirahiku Aquaculture Group, Ngāi Tahu Seafood, and again, the level of involvement. I've this morning redone the last draft, and there were 247 comments again. So it is very accurate. It reflects the industry, both central and local government. So I think this document we can have a lot of confidence in. Okay, and this is just the job slide really quickly again.
Chair, can I just ask a question?
Sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Leslie.
Bobby, have you factored in a risk for any of these projects to be potentially moved elsewhere because of the supply chain difficulties companies as they develop the technology?
Yeah, it's a really good point, Councillor Soper. So there's 2 parts to that as well. One is, this is why it needs to connect to the spatial planning that's going to come up, because that will give them confidence for the next 30 years that there'll be availability of water, roading, supply chain. It'll also mean that land is zoned appropriately if they're going to look at new processing plants, or allows airports or supply chain to expand. So that's why there's a whole section that talks about connection to spatial, and with the RM reform, they're specifically talking about alignment of terrestrial marine, and that's very big, as your staff will know. So yes, we're definitely going to be looking at that. We haven't undertaken any risk analysis because, again, we don't know yet the full extent of each project. They're going through their due diligence at this stage, and I think that would probably be a future piece of work.
So is the fact that there have been decisions made about air connections already factored into the risks there? Because that's obviously, I know, really creating a concern about the immediacy of getting product to Auckland or wherever.
Yes, it absolutely is, directly and indirectly, the fact that you do have less capacity to get things air freighted in and out, plus the perception of distance, so we are already quite far away from some markets. We've got to manage this, and that has been identified as a key enabler. So we've got another piece of work, which I'll show you in a minute if I don't take all the time today, where we actually want to look into this deeper. So all the supply chains, export, freight, and actually get some data to inform the providers of those services and link it up.
Thanks, Bobby. We should keep moving, I think. Thank you.
Rightio. Okay, so just really high level, and again, I'm probably ruining the surprise of when you get the document, but there's no surprises here with the areas of focus. Just for fun, we did map out all the different pieces of legislation and policy which impact being able to do aquaculture on land and water, and it is extremely complex. So this is why it is not a straightforward exercise for somebody to just go and do aquaculture. But I think that's important because there is often a thought that just get a consent quicker, or it's actually what consent for what, and there's a reason why biosecurity, for example, the rules protect the marine environment, and if we don't have that, none of the economic stuff can happen. Okay, so off aquaculture, just really quickly, so just to thank some of the councillors and the chair for attending the Housing Forum. It was about a month ago. I can't believe how quickly that's gone. Look, it was really successful. We've had quite a lot of feedback and follow-up since then. We just wanted to get people together to have the conversations because, as we've said to you before, we all know the challenges. The solutions will be predominantly from the market. So whether it's encouraging them to build smaller homes for older folk, through to encouraging homeowners to retrofit their homes. So really good, lovely food, and it was awesome to do it with the Waihopai Runaka as well, and line that up with the opening of the Papakoika. So thank you for your staff support too. We really appreciated that because that was actually held in collaboration with all of the councils. Also, thank you to your awesome staff because we have launched the Build Southland website, which has gone down really well. So remember, the purpose of this was just to make it easy for people to find the rules in order for them to do stuff to do with housing, whether it's to build, to shift to the region, to retrofit. So what we've just done is put connections into all the council site through one site. And as you can see, there's lots of different parts there, from resource consent through to building, through to QV to find the value of your house. Just a couple of facts really quickly, because I'm taking all the time, on your housing market. Yes, probably backing up everything you know, but your house prices have increased. So this is to the year end March. So from 460 to 468,000. You have had more house sales, which probably won't surprise you. It is taking longer to sell a house, so that's increased from 34 to 37 days. And the number of listings on Airbnb has slightly dropped. In terms of new builds, there has been a bit of a decrease of 14.4%. However, just put that in context when you look at the numbers from 167 to 143. However, this is something that's popped up across all of the councils in Southland. The cost per square metre has increased 12.6%. So it's getting more expensive to build homes, but we are building larger homes still. And the last slide around housing is to talk about affordability. So this is probably the most concerning part of the housing equation at the moment. Affordability has definitely worsened. So remember, this is how we calculate it. We look at what a household brings in terms of their average income, and then you divide what they've got to pay out for rent or mortgage payments, and you can get a percentage. The big one is rental affordability. So while that has remained unchanged, the fact that it's gone up and the fact that you've got a lack of supply in the market means that there's a real tightening. And as Councillor Soper knows, you're seeing some negative social impacts on the other end, in terms of homelessness, in terms of, other not great social things. So again, the figures are figures. You know, we've just got to probably put them in context. Okay, last couple of slides. Dish is going really well. Remember, I've talked to you about this for a wee while and you're probably sick of it. So it's getting some really good visitation. So Dish was the Data Insight Southland Hub. Remember, we had different categories from housing to tourism to economic, and we just added with Ministry of Social Development, wellbeing. So we're getting some good visitation and repeat visitation to the site, but I think what I like is that it's getting consistent information out, and those boxes down below, in terms of, you know, we use it to send media, you know, they get the same information, like a minister, as well as businesses doing business plans. So I'm really liking that the goal of getting consistent information, I think, is starting to happen through this tool. As you know, we've been developing quarterly reports, and we've just got another couple coming out very soon, tourism and economic, the second lot. That allows us to look at things quarterly and start to see trends, which are really important, because as we know, some of our industries are seasonal, you know, so you can't look at it, you know, we're busy. Yeah, so they're going really well. And we've got some enhancements coming up in terms of looking at the council's data needs alongside Environment Southland, thinking of the GIS functions that are going to be needed to inform spatial planning. We're having another wee play with the housing dashboard, just to make it a bit more user-friendly, and that geospatial data. And last slide is just what we've got coming up. And I just slipped this one in because you've already alluded to these things today. They're obviously very, very important. The Industry Water Resilience Plan is us, alongside Environment Southland and the councils, talking to the key industrial users of water to understand what they're doing now, what they've got coming up, what they may need, and barriers, you know, or challenges. That will be aggregated and then presented back to the council. So that will be key for you to understand potential future volumes. There'll be a bit of work around agriculture. Say no more, but very important for the region, with over 4.4 billion of our, which is over half of our GDP contribution coming from agriculture. And then that final bit was what we were talking to before around regional transport, freight, export. Just really making sure we can gear up for all the cool opportunities that are coming up.
Right. I think I'll let Mark speak first, and then I'll come back to Steve's slides.
Kia ora, Chair, councillors and the ICC team. I missed out on my pitch for jobs in tourism and hospitality to the Fernworth school kids, but they just ducked out. Never mind. Look, I just wanted to focus first on when we came in last year, what we were looking at is to continue to build that year-round travel. We focused on trade, digital trade and PR and digital events in our calendars, events calendars and our social media. We've been focusing on capability, growing day tours, ex-Invercargill out to our regions, Bluff, Rakiora, Gore and Catlins. We've very much focused on trade for mills, and that's getting people to the region to have a look. It's our most effective tool, without a doubt, and media for mills. And then the Southern Way collaboration, which is a much wider inter-regional collaboration across the Waitaki River south. Business events and events are a key part of what we're doing from a seasonality perspective and connectivity, and that's airline and land. And that's working as hard as we can to maintain what we have and then look at how we can possibly grow that in future years. And data, as Bobby's alluded to. Just some of the results in the year in review. For mills, we've hosted 28 for mills across the region, and that's not including our business events for mills, which probably add about another 10 to that. And we've had a lot of Kia Ora magazine, Hardest Geezer, Minecraft, Tourism New Zealand, and all these build profile for us. The highlight's probably been with the balancing out of the estimated audience value between Fiordland and Southland. It's almost 50-50 now, so we've had 35 million in additional income based around that advertising, and that's one of our goals was to spread the storytelling. So we're starting to be able to get that. Used to be heavily flavoured towards Fiordland for obvious reasons. We've had 24 editorials and advertorials in major magazines across the year, and there's just a few images there of the hardest geezer who started in Bluff and headed north. Just some further year in the review highlights. Tourism Export Council kicked us off in September. That was crucial, having 200 odd industry influencers based here in Invercargill, and being able to see the changes in the CBD and the things that we now have on offer across Morihiku. We've had strong business events pipeline. The Regional Events Promotion Fund secured 92,000 in round 2. Round 1, which crossed the previous financial year, was about 130 odd thousand from memory. We've been working to diversify the marketing mix, and that's not just focusing on our domestic market, but focusing on East Coast Australia, our international market. And we received 350,000 from the Regional Tourism Boost funding to work across the Southern Way. And we looked at working with Dunedin on introducing the Jetstar Direct service in June. And we've had a number of media and famils, and we've just had our team, the 8 RTOs, regions across them, Coolangatta and Brisbane, following that up with trade training and things like that to build on that, and they've just come back. And we're in the Southern Way, obviously, we've got that starting to work, and that's the 3 airports and the 8 RTOs, as I said, south of the Waitaki. Bluff, we've had some great meetings out there with the community board, and reviewed the priorities for the coming year, and that's really focusing on product packaging and capability development. We need our operators to be able to do more and have better skills in digital trade development and things like that, with development and sharing of the Motor Puahi Bluff story, and continuing to grow that Bluff visitor experience and the Mataruki Po, which is a long-term, and that's around storytelling and awareness. And that's just an example of some of the work we've been doing on food and building our foodscape across the region. It's a key part and a key pillar, and it's a key export actually in terms of what we do, but you can't beat provenance and showing people what we have here and around the region. And the next 12 months is really staying focused, keeping doing what we're doing, supporting our own accommodation and connectivity, business events and events. Like I said, that's key for us. It's bringing people here for long term. It gives us the opportunity to target areas of the year are off-peak when we have plenty of capacity and plenty of opportunity to bring those events, business events in. We keep building collaboration with Air New Zealand, and we also do that collaboration with Air New Zealand through the Southern Way. And we've got another program with them that's in Easter next year, and that's between the 3 airports as well, and we open jaw it, so people come in and travel around the region, and then they can fly out of the other airport.
Excuse me, Chair. Has that been had uptake in that? In that Southern Way, are people using that?
Yeah, I hate to say what the last domestic campaign we did, but the best-selling service was Wellington Invercargill. And then it disappeared, but they know all about that, so, yeah. Tourism New Zealand, we've done really well in that space, and that's crucial for us because we've now got 3 regional brand assets being used by Tourism New Zealand. We've got the Humpbridge track, we've got Welcome Rock up by Garston, and of course they keep wanting to do things in Milford Sound. But once again, that's their international campaigns. And again, once again, we just keep working on that Southern Way. We've got funding this year. We're hoping that that funding will be available next year, especially in demand and on supply side. But for us, we need to keep building the demand side. And domestic is soft, so we are always doing domestic. It's always on, it's just soft. So we just got to wait for that to cycle through. Thank you.
Do we know, and it's extremely difficult to get numbers because we don't count cars crossing the border from Otago, but do we have any numbers on how tourist numbers compare today with pre-COVID?
Yes, we can give you those numbers. I can send that through to you.
You want to hazard I mean, are we now above where we were pre-COVID, or are we still below? Or
It depends where you are in the region. Milford Sound is about 97% pre-COVID numbers. We're probably sitting around 85, 86%. One of the things that we've just started to see in terms of flow is, and that's been helping spend in the region, and that's the international flows down through Murihiku and around the region have increased again quite a lot. I haven't looked back at pre-COVID. Whilst pre-COVID's great, I tend to be looking at where we can get more from on the front foot. And one of the things that we've noticed is whilst spend is down, it's not significantly down. And I think in the last market view for Invercargill City, we're about 3.6% down, and that's actually been held up because of probably the international coming through. Domestic corporate travel soft, so.
okay. Yes, Grant.
Probably keen. How easy is it for a visitor, domestic or international, to navigate our tourist infrastructure? So if I'm arriving in Invercargill for a day or 2 or 3 days, how easy is it for me to say, right, these are the things I need to go to?
Look, it's hard to answer, but the tools that are out there to use is more and more of our tourists are using AI and putting a itinerary in. If you put an itinerary in, it's actually pretty good. It's not actually too bad. So in terms of, from a technological perspective, navigating is relatively easy. We get really good visitation on the website, and a lot of the visitation is picked up from internal Southland. We can't tell whether that's locals or a visitor unless we sort of look at cell phone usage or something like that, but we don't get that data.
I think that's one of the things that came out of that Bluff workshop was the sort of how do they connect to the tourists and the tourists connect to them to do some of their activities.
Yeah, and it's AI is not the boogeyman. It's actually really, really, really good to learn at a basic level, and I think that's one of those. We talked about digital at those workshops, and for our broader operators, it's a really good opportunity because it's transformational.
Mm. And then you think about domestic tourism, and I agree, you know, there's just been 350 quantity surveyors down recently, and, you know, it'd be interesting to survey them, how many of them went and did some stuff while they were here.
Yeah.
And for me, that's also the opportunity to, they're here in business, but then to bring their families back and have a stay for a week and go to the Catlins.
Yeah, you're 100%.
Tick around, and so, you know, I think we can keep chasing the dream of trying to attract more and more. I think we've just got to get really good at what we bring. We get real good value out of, and it may be repeat value or it may be value while they're here, but I think that's our opportunity.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of headroom around in that space, and not just getting them to do other things, but also live, work and invest. That's nice.
Good point about AI though.
So a lot of questions. So I've got Leslie, then Panya, then Trish.
So just as a bit of a follow-on, you often hear people still referring to our lack of a physical information centre for tourists. So what's your feeling about?
Look, across the country, there's less and less of them. They're nice to have. It's great to be able to have people that can sit and talk. Whether they make money or not, it's pretty rare that they do. They've got to be in a unique space to do that. And there's just, as I said, there's more and more opportunity around technology, but you can never beat having a conversation. But at the end of the day, it's quite an expensive thing to carry, to have a conversation.
So it's not a top priority?
No.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Panya.
My question just builds on what Grant just said around people staying and remaining in Bluff at times. I'm just wondering if there's been any work progressed around the cruise ships coming in and what, you know, opportunities Bluff will have in actually attracting them within the township, because this has been an ongoing issue for us. Literally, we know that there's a problem here, but we actually haven't landed anything solid to solve that issue. So I'm just wondering, you know, what work is happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, look, year to year, we keep trying to up the capability in terms of not just locally, but regionally. And we've actually, in terms of, one of the problems we have is being able to get transport to stay locally. Probably not much of an issue toward Bluff, but we don't have a lot of smaller vehicles. And so getting people around the region is the cruise lines don't like putting 16 people on a large coach. They'll cancel a coach. So we do have a person or a company now that's just moved into town that's looking to grow one of the smaller companies. In terms of getting back to Bluff, we need to be able to get over time work access off the wharf better for people to be able to come and walk into town. And then there's actually some things that are starting to happen around Bluff in terms of walking and then we just need to keep building on that. So I don't have an answer for you right now, but we keep working on that capability.
Trish?
Again, it's just in terms of tourists and people coming into town. Many places that I've travelled to, they say you're going to somewhere for a day, these are some things you can do. I don't know, I'm sorry, if they're on our website or where we've got those available, but those are some things that people will look for. I mean, I use AI, I would do that, but sometimes that visual thing that you can print off and say, right, there's 3 things I want to do, I've got 2 days.
Yep.
It would be the same for Bluff. If they, you know, like even for the people coming in here, there are things in Bluff, all sorts of things, even the most amazing marae. I've taken in people from India there and they just absolutely love it. So, you know, it's just, so you've got 3 days, this is what you could do. You are looking at things like that, but that's what I look for when I travel.
Yep. We have those. I guess just got my brain racing on how do you surface it better. Yep.
I think we should try to keep moving, actually.
Yep. Right, thank you.
Right, good work.
Thank you.
Thank you. So very quickly, I'll do business support and diversification. We touched on this briefly in at the beginning of our meeting today. So regional business partner, RBP, and those are the targets that have been set by MB for us, and so we've been able to achieve those targets. The capability funding, which I spoke to before, Grant, was really, that's that 132,000. It supports businesses to, whether it's like finance or marketing or sustainability or sort of leadership development, any of those areas, there are approved suppliers and they can access that funding to participate in those courses. Southland Youth Futures, we again spoke about very briefly. Southland Youth Futures continues to support predominantly students in from year 10 to year 13. Year 10, they start off with the work-ready passport. They'll do it again in year 12, build up their interview skills, build up their capability around understanding the world of work. We engage with employers. Why it has been so successful in our region is that our employers have really come on board. We have 50 sort of gold standard employers that always connect with those students, and they know how to engage them to understand and deliver what it is that they do and how students can look forward to progressing careers within those relative areas. It's a really important part for us, especially as we look at aquaculture or developing agritech or, you know, doubling our tourism sort of fee, anything. We need our workforce. And we've got a prime resource here with some really capable, smart, young people that just need to be exposed to what the world of work is. And that's quite hard, actually, as well, because, you know, in another 5 years from now, none of the jobs that we have today will be prevalent. And so it's trying to keep up with all of that. But we delivered the Careers Fest. It's just completed, and some of the numbers out of that was this close to about 3,000 students who went through that. We had more employers and institutions than we've had before. About 650 people came to the public session. So the word's really getting out there on how to support our youth to make the right decisions, to progress their sort of career pathways forward. Another piece of work for Southland Youth Futures in particular is about enhancing women in trade, and that's a piece of work that we've carried on for the last, I think, about 4 years or 5 years, and it's been really, really popular to getting more women into those what was predominantly male-dominated cultures, careers before. So that
Tammy,
slide.
could I ask just on that one? I mean, to me, this is an extremely important issue for Invercargill, in fact, for Southland. And it has been for years. We've still got more people leaving the workforce through retirement than we do have young people leaving school and joining the workforce. And we're countering that mainly through immigration, which is great. We've got a lot of really good people coming in. But, you know, for all sorts of reasons, ethical as well as business reasons, you know, we just cannot afford to leave people behind. And I'm really wondering whether we are doing enough in the youth futures. When I say we, I mean ICC are doing enough to support youth futures, and you may just give that some thought. I don't know the extent to which that is resource constrained, but I think we haven't heard much of it in the last few years. I think we probably need to hear more, and we probably need to support it more. I can just leave that thought with you.
Thank you, Chair. No, I appreciate that. It's definitely something we do need. We have only funding committed to for this year. So if we want to continue this piece of work and we want to build it in, and I think, you know, as we workshop what our future, the next LTP cycle, but really what is the future for the next 10 years for Southland, and Invercargill workforce is going to be critical to that. So how do we make those systemic changes now to be able to get to where we need to over the, you know, the period of time? Bobby spoke about the skills, the change in skills needed, obviously, if automation, higher technology skills, you know, especially for aquaculture, and even with agriculture, we feel that technology is going to enhance the value and the efficiencies and productivity. So our workers are going to need a lot more technical skills. So that's probably an area that we do need to focus on. And it will be something that I'll probably bring up in February when we have our next workshop about the future of work, because it's not a piece that has been identified as a focus area for Great South. More than happy to take it on board, but we will have to look at what it looks like, how it is funded, and how we're going to, what are the deliverables over the next few years.
Leslie.
But Chami, you did say that only SDC at the moment is putting any funding or priority on Mayor's Task Force for Jobs.
Yes.
Which is an important part of that.
Yes, so unfortunately, Mayor's Task Force for Jobs has changed quite dramatically to where it was last year. The Minister for Social Development has received a target to reduce people on the job seeker benefit by 50,000 by 2030 in the next 5 years. So what they've done is they've repurposed Mayor's Task Force for Jobs to just working with those on the job seeker benefit between 18 to 24 years and getting them into the world of work. That is really a Band-Aid. We're not stopping people getting onto the job benefit, which is what Southland Youth Futures and Mayor's Task Force for Jobs did, which is a real shame. And if we have an opportunity to actually address that, while Mayor's Task Force for Jobs will continue in this fashion for the next 5 years or so, it would be greatly beneficial for us as a region. We'll have less people out of work, more skills in work, less people on benefits. And, you know, once you're in, well, generally, rule of thumb is, I think, if you're on the benefit, you continue to be on the benefit for a significant period of time. So you're taking away valuable resources that could be used for other things when they should be working. So it's a really, I think it's an important piece for us, and if it's okay, I will check with the joint shareholders, obviously, but bring it up as a real meaty discussion I think we need to have in February. And just, I'll touch very briefly on the, sorry, Net Zero Southland. So the regional energy strategy and the work we do about, around managing, monitoring our regional emissions, and how we support businesses on their decarbonisation journey. So as you know, I mean, we've thrown these stats around for a long, long time, but 80% of our produce and 80% of our produce is exported. 12% of New Zealand's exports come from Southland. So given these stats, it's really important that our exporters have the opportunity to support and access a niche market through their carbon-related disclosures. And that's why decarbonisation and the decarbonisation journeys for individual businesses are really, really important. Southport is a listed company, and Great South has now done, I think, about 4 pieces of work to support their carbon-related disclosures. First time we've worked with a listed company for New Zealand, so it's been really good to understand what the requirements are. But now that means we have the capability to support and really supercharge our export opportunities, including with aquaculture or enhanced agriculture or any of the tourism products that we're doing, even with SIT, you know, with the export education piece. There's all of these opportunities that are coming our way now, which is great.
Jamie, could I just ask you, you mentioned the work that you've been doing for Southport, and I know you do work for Fonterra and others. Do we charge those at commercial rates?
Yeah, they're private, they're commercial contracts. So it's not anything that is done through the ratepayers' money.
I was going a little bit beyond the fact that do we charge commercial rates?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We charge commercial rates, and we are looking at how we can develop it as a model to take it anywhere in the country, really. So looking at those alternative commercial opportunities for the company. So really this year we've re-looked at the net zero energy strategy. So we've reviewed the framework, and that will be published shortly. The energy strategy also has been reviewed. It was released in June 23, so about a couple of years have gone since then. So our demand is growing. We know that our demand is growing, but we also had seen, I think it must have been about 3 or 4 council meetings before, where we alluded to the fact that there's quite a few farms that are being converted to forestry, and what that really impacts, how that impacts on us, and what that really means for our region. What has come out of that is that there is an opportunity, a likely opportunity for us to develop a woody biomass industry in Southland now. And we know that the future energy demands, right up there, I've mentioned there, 500 megawatts of new demand has been identified currently, but this is expected to grow to 2,750 megawatts in the next 5 years. Where are we going to get this energy from? How are we going to, support our new businesses and industries coming here? So that's a piece of work that Steve has been working on. So he's mapped all of the wind, all of the solar. There was hydroelectricity, not in Southland, but in neighbouring areas, and working with Transpower and various operators to see how we can, what are the sort of opportunities there. I spoke to you about wood biomass as a fuel. We spoke about several of our large industries, their fossil fuel burners being converted either to electricity or woody biomass. 70 of those boilers are currently for wood fuels. We feel that, and the demand is growing, so therefore we feel that there is that opportunity for a wood biomass industry in Southland. Sorry, and some of the other reports that Steve's area has completed. So we've developed a business capacity plan, and that is really looking at what are the businesses that are here to support new industry growth, from lawyers or your accountants or your marketing firms or your service providers or your HR consultants, through to specialist engineering factories, freight forwarders, supply logistics providers, so on and so forth. So these are like the support services that we currently have, which will help us when we're looking at new industry development, working with the chamber, especially around supply chain support, what is missing, what else will we need? And this is a document that will be reviewed regularly as new businesses come on or businesses fall off. We're looking at 3 new large-scale industries, and these are all private opportunities with silica minerals and carbonized sort of hard rocks. Again, very early stages, just with the land that we have within our region. Feasibility studies are still being undertaken, but there's a lot happening in Southland at this particular point in time, and we should be really proud of where we are with it. So Steve's just provided some information to the council already around the Chatham Formation bores. I think he said 420 bores were analysed to get that piece of information. Groundwater mapping, leapfrog modelling, so on and so forth. And these will all support the councils with their future pieces of work. And aquaculture actually identified, if we do grow it to the $1 billion or $3 billion industry, we have a really unique opportunity to look at an aquafeed industry as well. Scretin's already been in conversation with us, but currently the demand doesn't allow them to actually look at a processing plant, but that would be a unique opportunity to, if the industry grew to where we think it will give us a unique opportunity because of the soils that we have in our region and the ability to grow the crops that are needed to give high-value plant-based protein aquafeed opportunities. So a further industry really that could be investigated and looked at. And that's me. So really, sorry, Chair, if you don't mind, I'll summarize this really. What we want to do for 26-27 is to continue down this path of work. While we continue down this path of work, in February next year, workshop with the shareholders, what it is that you want us to concentrate on for the following 3 years, 27 to 2030. How do we look at where are the gaps, workforce, Environment Southland was talking about something around community. Not really quite sure what they were talking about there, but they just mentioned that word as well. But what are the priorities that our shareholders want of us to look at? And there will be elements of work that we will need to continue to progress: aquaculture, the housing, advocacy for roading, transport, our export plans, integrated sort of facilities for our exports, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to leave that with you just with, for this final year of the LTP to, if it suits you, to support us with the current focus areas, and then we can really have a good discussion about what it is that you want us to do thereafter.
Okay, thank you. So, Grant.
Yeah, thank you. I just look at the capabilities sitting at the table there, up there. I think what you've got to do with that next planning cycle is actually present to us what you think we should be focusing on. I mean, you guys know it. Mark, you know tourism, you know housing, Bobby, and, you know, I think there's a risk that we sort of get pet projects as opposed to, and to your usual language, Mark, you know, we've got to stay the course. That wasn't the language used, but we've got to just keep focused on what, you know, plan is for the next period of time. But I think what I'd be looking for if I'm around the table, and hopefully I am, is guidance from you. You're the specialists in the area. You're working it all the time. You know how the tectonic plates are moving. What are the priorities we should have, and how do we execute those priorities? And I think that then forms a very good discussion document for all councils to then be able to say, be more informed about, okay, and either hunker down on those or, you know, perhaps amend. You would hope there wouldn't be anything that comes from left field. But I think you've just got to back yourselves around. You've got the expertise and knowledge of our region, what's important to us, and you present to us would be. Gee, I think, you know, otherwise you get into this sort of navel-gazing sort of approach and you sort of spin your wheels, and that worries me when it's such an important piece of work.
Yep, no, happy to do that.
I think just building on that, and I will come at you, Trish, but just building on that point, I mean, to me, the key work for you has always been to be a strategic enabler of change, you know, a strategic catalyst for change. I think it's easy to get dragged into service type work sometimes, things where you can show an immediate return. I don't think that's actually the core work of you. I think Great South has got to be, working in a kind of 5-10 year time frame, and most of the things that you're showing us are of that type. It doesn't mean there's not also service contracts that you do, some very important ones like Youth Futures, but I think that strategic context is always the most important. And sometimes I think it's easier to, get asked a question, show us what value you have brought. And that tends to drag you into short-termism sometimes. But I think if you stand back far enough, we've got Southland's got probably the strongest economy in the country. We've got the lowest unemployment rate. We've got the highest participation rate. Even for youth now, we're now seeing low unemployment rate. We've got some tremendous future prospects. So if you kind of stand back, the cake is looking pretty good. If you're looking at for exactly what a particular ingredient like Great South brings to it, prove the vanilla is very important rather than the flavour in the milk. I think that's a completely pointless exercise for you. So I'm hoping. I think this is building on what you were saying, Grant. I hope that when you do bring back to us that sort of here are the things that we think are really important. Let's make sure that strategic. Yeah. Sorry, Trish. Take your question.
Again, it's just building onto that. It seems to me, from what I've heard this morning, which has been outstanding, thanks. It's great to see a good team of professionals at the table like this. I'm thinking about staffing, the staffing you may need to deliver this, and what's reasonable, and what's, a wish, and what's a need. And so, as a member of the council, I haven't really understood that so well. And I'm here at the table again. I would like to see that, like to say, well, part of our funding is going to need to increase for us to deliver this. This is what we need realistically. And it's just we've got to keep our eye on the big picture, and that's what you're doing. So it's just, how do we do that, as well as do those specific things like Youth Futures or other things that come up?
Yep, no, absolutely.
Thanks, that was good.
Thank you.
A last question, and we'll stop. Panya.
Yeah, I just wanted to actually say thank you. What a great presentation and insights, especially on the aquaculture type picture, because that profile is important. I think for me, it's, as others have probably said, is honing down on some key things that council may need to consider. And one of the things that sort of came to mind from me when that was up was actually the infrastructure in that area. That's probably one of the key things, that we probably need to understand what that looks like and how we can support in getting that right so that we can actually grow those opportunities. And so I just think the work that you're doing is great. The other thing I would also want to share is that distribution thing, having that on, I suppose, on the radar in a sense is like, God, we're going to have to do some thinking around how we can free up and actually ensure that pipeline of distribution is actually happening so that we can actually deliver. But no, again, I think, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for this.
So I think we'll call a halt at that, but just to look forward now. So I think I'm looking at you, Rhiannon, when I say this. The process is that a letter of expectation will be written in the next couple of months. Is that, there'll be no workshops before then, will there?
So yes, you're correct, Chair. My understanding is that the letter of expectation is being drafted by the Mayoral Forum Policy Advisor at this time, and she's actually working in with Southland District, obviously, that provide governance for the joint shareholders. So that's actually being finalised very shortly in order to meet the timeframes so that it will be done before the election. And I think this is certainly the last workshop for our process.
Thank you. So this eventually leads to a statement of intent, which is agreed between us, eventually becomes a contract between us, which will be due to be completed by when, Rhiannon? Do you think March, April, something like that?
Statement of intent will be 1st of December, and it'll come back to, in a draft form, it'll come back to the councils for review and for feedback before the 31st of March next year, for it to be adopted by the 30th of June, Chair.
Okay, that's good. Well, thank you for that. So I think we'll call a halt at that. So very much appreciate you coming, Chammy, with your team.
Thank
that was
you.
very, very interesting. So thanks a lot, and we'll look forward to seeing a proposed letter of expectation coming from staff to council. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us, and have a good evening. Good afternoon. It's not evening yet.
And that concludes the business of the day, so we'll call